In this video, we're going to be identifying a concern with applying compression to short articulations inside sample libraries. We'll also take a quick look at an alternative to compression as well. Firstly, why apply compression? Well, sample libraries still need a little bit of mixing when you have a finished full production. This could be that some of the velocities are still poking out through the arrangement, but you want to trigger that high velocity to make sure that you get the timbre and the dynamic correct. You might find some resonances with the room that you want to control. There's a whole host of reasons why one might still wish to apply compression. Um, the one thing that I would say is if you don't know why you're applying it, then you shouldn't be applying it. The danger with applying compression to sample libraries, and what we often see, is that it will boost what is known as a noise floor. Now, what is a noise floor? A noise floor is made up of sounds that we deem unwanted. So this could be cable noise, it could be room ambience, it could be the sound of a vintage mic and the tubes in it. It could be anything such as those things. And it lives at the bottom of the audio spectrum. So when we compress anything, as we bring the RMS level, so the average level of that sound upwards, you also raise the noise floor. So why is a noise floor more of a concern on a sample library? So if you are, say, working with the Violins 1 ensemble in a symphonic sample library, and you have the close microphones activated, you're not just triggering one close microphone across a section every note that you trigger. In a symphonic section for the first violins, you're likely going to see a microphone every music stand, which means if there are 16 first violins, there will be 8 microphones that make up that close signal. So if you now stack a 3-note chord on that first violin using the closed microphones, you're now triggering 24 different microphones for those 3 samples, because Spitfire provide the mix of the closed microphones. They don't provide every single one. You also have to think about if you are triggering a short note, the tone of that note finishes a lot quicker, but you've still excited the room at quite a loud velocity. And as such, you have to wait for that room decay to finish before you can actually finish the edit of the sample, which means there's a whole load of space for compression to actually bring up nothing but room tone and noise floor. So one question that you might have as a result of this is, do sample library developers not noise reduce their samples? Well, yes, they do, but there's actually only so much that you can do before you start hitting limitations when you have so many signals involved. One of the first of these is you actually start to lose the tonal detail of the room and the ambience. You start to really hinder that room sound. So if you're recording in, let's say, Air Studios, you're going to start reducing the actual hall tone and, the actual beauty and the sound of that room. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you noise reduce too aggressively as well, you're going to start losing the tone of the actual note. And the final thing to bear in mind is that not all noise floors are bad. Actually, retaining some noise floor is a very positive thing. And the reason for that is if you, say, for example, have a full symphonic sample library where you've recorded violins 1 on a different day to the cellos, that noise floor is actually going to allow you to glue the sections together. It brings a common ground in between these different recordings, and it allows a lot more homogeny and cohesion to be brought when you actually start blending those samples together. And that's one of the reasons why now companies have started to introduce noise controls into their sample libraries. Native Instruments did it with Noir, and we've done it with Appassionata. It's it's starting to become quite a common feature that we see in sample libraries. So let's now dive in and take a look at applying some compression to a shorter articulation. For the purposes of this demo, I wanted to use Abbey Road 2, so huge shout out to Homai for lending me her Abbey Road 2 demo. And the reason why is Abbey Road 2 is designed to be a very vintage library. It uses a lot of vintage microphones, and as such, there's potential for some noise. Okay, and the section that I think we should take a look at is the double bass here. So if we just solo this. What I'd quite like to do with these double basses is I'd quite like to just tame the whoom low end that we're hearing, which is quite a common thing that we hear on double bass pits, this whoom. And I'd quite like to just tame it a little bit in order to tighten the low end in this section. So firstly, if I was to showcase the concern, so if I was to add an EQ here, and I'm going to filter out the tone of the note so we don't hear the tone of the note. This is also going to cut a large amount of the room tone out as well. So if we filter all this out and we boost the high shelf of around 30 dB, which is crazily excessive, but we will now hear the noise floor. We can also hear there that a lot of that noise is coming after the note has actually been hit. And that's because the length of the sample is allowing for the room to decay. So if I was to now bypass this and bring it back to normal, we can hear that the room is now decaying after the note has been hit. So how do we now go about taming the room? So if I was to apply a bit of compression, the main thing we need to understand here is the relationship between the attack and the release control. So if I was to have a very fast attack and apply this quite aggressively, and I have a relatively fast release, what we're going to hear now is we're going to hear the initial note is crushed, the initial attack, but the noise floor is going to kick up. So what we need to understand is the controls around the objective as to what we're trying to achieve. So in this case, as a reminder, we're going to try and tame the room noise, which is quite a slow sound, which is happening after the actual note is hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the attack, and that's going to allow us to preserve the transient, the initial note that's going to allow us to preserve. And then it's going to start compressing later on. We're then going to set the release in order to make sure that the release is staying long enough until the next note is hit. And that way we should protect against any pumping or raising of the noise floor. The other thing that we can do here is we can be less aggressive with the compression. It's important to understand the objective that you're trying to achieve and ask yourself, is there another way to go about doing this? So instead of applying this too aggressively, we could back off the compression a little bit. And we could bring in something that's more like a shaping tool, like a transient designer, and we can just dial down the sustain ever so slightly. Without the combination of these, we have, and with the combination, we're just tightening that low end quite a lot. And in the context of the piece, and without. The transient design is actually a little bit too aggressive for my taste, so I'll just back off that a little bit. So as we can hear there, the combination of this processing is just tightening up the low end of this particular section. And it's doing it in a way which is really controlled, very gentle, and we're not enhancing any artifacts that are going to cause us problems. The attack and release time in the compressor is the thing that is really important to understand, because that's going to be the tool that enables you to set exactly which part of the sound is being compressed, whether that be the start of the note or the actual decay of the note. So getting these controls right is really important. If you have any further questions, please do get in touch with us at spitfireaudio.com/support. Thanks.
Thanks for watching Spitfire Clips. Let us know if it was too long, too short, too fast, or too slow in the comments down below. Hit like if we answered your question, and subscribe for more clips, tips, tricks, and exclusive Spitfire content.